Chair, you are live.
All right, thank you very much. And welcome everyone to the October meeting of the City of Annapolis Environmental Commission. Got a great agenda here for you this evening. I'll just dive right in and introduce myself. I'm Jeremy Hansen, the chair of the commission, resident of Ward 5. I'll just go around the screen as I see people and ask you to state your name and test your microphone. So Alicia.
Hi, I'm Alicia Roberson. I'm with Ward 7.
Linda.
Hi, Linda Matthew here, Ward 5.
Kathy.
Kathy Welker, Ward 5.
Marianne.
Marianne Marbury, Ward 1.
All right, so we have 5 members, so that is a quorum, and we'll see if we pick up any additional members. I'll turn now to city staff to introduce themselves. Dylan.
Hi, I'm Dylan McConich, Environmental Programs Coordinator in the city.
And Jackie.
I'm Jackie Guile, Deputy City Manager for Resilience and Sustainability.
Great. Are you just on the phone tonight, Jackie?
I will be for a while. I'm between places right now.
Gotcha. All right. All right. Well, we'll just dive right in to the minutes. Dylan was very great at getting us a few different sets of minutes. So if folks have had a chance to look those over, we can work to approve those. And Jenny, you want to introduce yourself? I just saw you join.
Hi, Jenny Janis, Ward 6.
Thank you. Let's see. So as far as minutes, we've got, what was it, June, July, and wait, no. Remind me which months you had there, Dylan.
I believe we have June and July, and then September. We'll need to confirm. Marianne, were you at that meeting? I couldn't quite recall. I'm not sure if we had a quorum or not.
I was there. I was traveling, so I was listening in for the most part.
Okay, so I'll update the September, and we can have that approved in the next meeting.
Okay, great.
I could do it right now if you think it's okay.
Well, let me ask. Can we just? Do we need to do one by one? I guess. Were there any updates or edits to the June minutes from anyone? All right. How about the July? And how about the September minutes?
September with amendments.
Yeah, September with the amendments, noting Marianne's participation.
Yeah.
And did anyone want more time to review them? All right, well, can we get some motions to approve the minutes?
I motion to approve the minutes.
All right, motion to approve all 3 sets, June, July, August.
Yes, I motion to approve all 3 sets, June, July, and August.
All right, let's do this efficiently. Thank you. And Linda seconds.
And I second that.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And just correction, it was June, July, and September.
Yes, September with the amendments for September. Yes, we took a break in August.
Yeah.
Great.
No opposed since we all said aye. So thank you. Thank you very much, Dylan. Getting us caught up.
Yeah, thank you, Dylan. That's
I know that's no fun.
yeah.
Done a few thousand pages of minutes in my day.
We appreciate that.
We're all so busy with projects, we forget about, these sorts of things that do matter.
Yeah, I know. I do. I will be grateful for those when it's time for our annual report.
Sure.
And by the way, Jeremy.
Yes.
They are looking for us to get annual reports done as soon as possible. It came up at the directors meeting today. Trying to get things done a little bit more quickly than usual this year. So as soon as let's put that on the list of things to do.
Got it. Great prompt.
Great. Good segue, Jeremy.
More.
All right. While we're still on admin, I did just want to note when we first looked at all the meeting dates for the year of 2024, we knew November and December weren't good dates, but I never actually circled back and confirmed what the new dates should be. So Dylan, is Tuesday, November 19th at 7 p.m. still the alternate date we can use?
I haven't reconfirmed since. I assume that at this moment, yes, it's available. However, after you guys decide on that, I'll have to double confirm with Mark if that's still available.
Yeah. Well, since we're not all online, I just want to see if we can get close to a quorum and then check with Bill or others that are missing. Kathy, you had a question?
Oh, I will be in Colorado at a conference then. I can do my best to log on. The activity should be done for the day because it's 7 o'clock there, so it will be 5 o'clock in Colorado. So hopefully I'll still be able to join.
Yeah. Any other conflicts from those on the line?
No, I'm good.
Good.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and go with that date for November, and we'll check with those who are missing. I guess just Paul and Bill, since Sarah stepping down.
I'll tell Mark to secure the date, and then if we need to change it, we can change it.
Great. And I was also going to suggest we take December off, unless, I mean, I guess we'll want to get our annual report done earlier, but I don't think that's enough to convene.
It's on Christmas Day, right? December?
Yeah, I think it would be. So we would definitely have to reschedule if we are determined to meet.
Yeah.
Could meet on Christmas. No.
Yeah, so any opposition to taking the month of September off, or December, is that something we need to vote on for the dates?
I don't know.
Or can we just, or is that my prerogative as chair?
Disagree.
If you
I'll-
run it, you can just decide you want to not meet that month, but if you think you need to meet earlier in the month just to work on your annual report or finalize it, you can always decide to do that.
Okay, thank you, Jackie.
And Jeremy, you and I can also work on the final report, help draft it together, and everyone can review it separately. I don't know if we need a meeting for it.
Right.
I don't
Yeah,
know if people are okay with that too. That's
Right,
another
yeah.
option.
you do have an option to vote on things online about, approve things like that, like by email.
Okay, that's great.
We did come up with that, many years ago, like 5 or 6 years ago, to approve things like that. We came up with an email option.
Okay.
Good. We can definitely take advantage of that in December then. All right, well, I think that's it for the admin. The next few things on our agenda, we'll be talking about a few different letters of support. I got one, Dylan shared one more to add to our list here. So we'll spend a chunk of time there before getting into the draft resilience plan, and then other updates or ongoing business before we wrap up on time.
Jeremy,
So
did you get that? Sorry to interrupt. Did you get the letter that I shared with you?
I did. I have
Okay.
not read it that closely. So when we get to, see, is that the one? Yeah,
That's
we were
fine,
going
I
to start with
wasn't
that
sure.
one. So can I just turn that over to you to discuss that letter?
Sure. Sounds good.
Yeah, so I think we'll start with that one before getting into the whole Watershed Act, and then a letter of support for a grant application Dylan's working on.
Okay. Yeah, I'll distribute this out. I did not give Jeremy enough time to look at it. I finished it, I think, on Monday. Let me share my screen. So I'll send this out to everybody and everyone can take a look at it, but I'll just introduce it. We had discussed in the last meeting doing a writing a letter of support, basically we were talking about different opportunities for increasing biodiversity and tree plantings on private development sites, and encouraging city staff who are reviewing these to remember that to look for opportunities to promote such actions when new developments come across their desk, and reminding that we're just a letter of support for, again, the comprehensive plan in general, as it states. And there's a quote on page 36 that I used, I pulled out, and it says, Annapolis will be a city which prioritizes the preservation, restoration, maintenance, and enhancement of its natural resources, particularly when planning for new development. So wanted to just kind of send a letter that reminds folks that, hey, there are precedents for innovative and interesting design solutions in the urban environment that we can use when encouraging private development to get creative and meeting our environmental goals. Kind of it in general. And if anyone has, I stayed pretty vague and sort of general in this letter. But if anyone has any suggestions as you read it and have some time to mull it over on if there's any specificity that could be added or should be added, I'm completely open to those ideas.
Jenny, when do you want our comments by? When are we thinking about submitting it?
Well, so this isn't really targeted for any one particular development. So let's see what's reasonable. I mean, I don't know. We could wait a month. I don't know if there's anything on the table right now that we want to send this letter and have it be kind of targeted toward as something is getting reviewed. I'm not sure what's in the review right now. Or we can just, hey, here it is, take a look at it, and then let's vote on it and send it out in November. It's two options.
And Jenny, if you wouldn't mind just zooming in a little bit for the folks online, I think that'd be helpful. And looking it over, thank you again for putting this together. I think it looks really great. I don't have anything off the top of my head to suggest or add. I think since we've established this letter is not always saying anything new we haven't already stated in our priorities or that we've endorsed like in the comprehensive plan or elsewhere, I think we can do this between meetings and send that in. So how does, let's see, what day is it? 2 weeks sound good?
Right, 2 weeks, sure. 23rd, 30th. So November 6th.
Day after Election Day.
Yeah.
Does that work?
Yeah, and I think, this kind of letter is, I kind of am seeing it as a general reminder, like, hey, there are all these opportunities. And then as we do have specific projects come our way, we find out about, we're interested in following up on those projects under this kind of guise, or under this kind of like understanding, I should say, might be a strategy.
Kathy.
I was wondering when the city reviews development proposals, what are they reviewing it against? Like, do they have, like, what would a section of their review look like for checking for,
Yeah, so the city has development standards, some of which come through different federal regulations, such as the Forest Conservation Act. So that's all available on the city Unicode website. But, I think and I'm not speaking for Jenny, but it seems like this letter is more or less to, I suppose, ask the planning department to try to advocate developers to go beyond those requirements that are established in the code. I don't think this letter is trying to establish the code be stronger or more strict.
No, I didn't get that. I'm wondering though, would we want to, I don't know if it'd be appropriate in the letter to invite whoever would be the appropriate person to come to a meeting to discuss like how they are approaching this, this language from the comp plan.
Mhm.
Yeah. And the other thing is that, so where's under the Forest Conservation Act, you have to do a preliminary site design and a preliminary forest conservation plan, and then you get the forest conservation plan itself has to go through approval. And there's different, and Alderman Savage is actually proposing some changes to it to make it a little tighter right now. And also to change when there's an appeal at any point in this process, that it stops the process, because currently that doesn't always stop. The developer can still continue to clear a lot when there's a question or an appeal occurring. And he's proposed legislation that would actually, when there's an appeal, that the site comes to a halt as far as the clearing of the site and the taking down of trees until that appeal is resolved at various points along the way. So that may change, depending on what happens with that legislation. But also there's going the above and the beyond, because sometimes the developer will say, well, I can't meet the requirements of the Forest Conservation Act on site, so I need to mitigate somewhere. I need to plant trees somewhere else in the city, along the streets or in a park, or can't even do that, so I'm going to pay the fee in lieu, which they're allowed to do. And they usually don't, because the city's fee in lieu is very high. We have the highest one in the state, and usually go to replant somewhere else. But sometimes they do pay. Very rarely do they pay the fee in lieu. Sometimes they try to get an exemption. So we'd rather they keep the trees on site rather than mitigate somewhere else or pay fee in lieu. So this is kind of encouraging them to be creative, where you've already met your Forest Conservation Act requirements, that you go beyond that and keep the trees that you have, because it's the tree canopy you get from mature trees is so much greater than mitigating and planting new trees somewhere else.
Right. And often, and in my experience, there are ways to design a site to allow for some of that, but it's not the first thought thing usually.
Right.
Unless it's encouraged and understood that that's the preference, and
right.
Not well, we did it this way and we can't go back and fix it.
Yeah. And it's kind of trying to get planning and zoning to kind of change that mindset. This is why Jenny's such a perfect person to write this letter. Rather than just, we met these specific criteria, we've checked the boxes and we're moving on, get them to think about this a little differently. So it may be a good idea to have the people that are charged with implementing this law meet with them, as you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I was as you were talking, before you got to the end, Jackie, I was wondering, like, do they even have the same expertise that like you do, Jenny? And like, what does this mean, and what does it look like, and how do you do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I would certainly be in favor of having them come and we could just chat with them and hear from them and.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe a statement somewhere towards the closing about welcoming those opportunity to converse with the city staff or set up meetings. Like, we can make that offer or make an offer of some sort. But I'll think about the phrasing.
Yeah.
Very least we can invite them to one of our meetings. But I realize the evening is probably not the most appealing time to have that conversation.
Okay. Well, I'll share this. It's already shared with everyone, but I'll reshare because I just modified a copy of a different letter, but I will resend it to everyone. So I'm going to stop sharing this.
Thank you, Jenny. All right, so the next one on the agenda was the whole Watershed Act. I feel like that might be a little more of a complex discussion. So I think I'd like to turn instead to the letter of support Dylan shared recently with me, and I have added it to our drive, our shared space for the commission, but I never sent out a message to the full group. So it is there. But Dylan, I'll let you speak to the letter. It looked pretty fairly complete from my quick glance at it, but tell us about the grant.
Absolutely. So right now, Department of Public Works is leading a grant application, and our office is providing some support. We've been in continuous discussion. I'm gonna try to share it. Just talking about different aspects of it. And basically the purpose of our grant application is to improve the trail connection between Truxton Park and Hawkins Cove, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. And so basically in this letter of support, I'm struggling to pull up, we're just establishing that this is consistent with the purpose of the Environmental Commission, and that, basically this would be a worthwhile endeavor for the city. And you're basically advocating to DNR and the grant reviewing team that this is, a project that they should fund. I could provide more support, in terms of costs and other things like that. If you find it worthwhile to add that, I'm about to share it so I can let you guys review it, and I can read it out if you'd like. But that's basically the general purpose of the letter of support. So pulling it up now. Thought I had it in the window, but I was being silly, I guess. Okay, can everyone see that?
Yes, zoom in a little bit.
Okay.
Thank you.
Of course. All right, so yeah, the Annapolis Environmental Commission is excited to express support for the Truxton Green Network Connector project submitted for funding through the Green Space Equity Program. This initiative represents a significant investment in environmental sustainability and well-being of our community, particularly benefiting residents of Eastport Terrace and Harbor House. The project will establish a crucial connection to Hawkins Cove via the city's Vitar conservation easement, enhancing access to the Spa Creek area. By improving the trail link to Truxton Park, we will expand access to vital community resources, promote outdoor activities, and foster greater community engagement. Access to green spaces and clean water has proven health benefits and is essential for fostering vibrant, thriving neighborhoods. Moreover, this initiative aligns perfectly with our codified purpose, which is the conservation and improvement of the natural health and welfare qualities of the environment, including the land, waters, air, and noise level of the city and environs. We strongly urge you to consider this project for the Green Space Equity Program. The Annapolis Environmental Commission looks forward to the opportunity to collaborate with the City of Annapolis on this important endeavor.
Really, really excellent letter there, Dylan. Open it up to questions. I think we have maybe alluded to this trail connector before when we talked about was it the CNI or that general project or the suite of projects going on over there. Jenny?
Yeah, that was actually, I was wondering, does it make sense to reference the suite of projects that this would build upon or link into?
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Yeah, we're talking about improving that entire area, so we can reference our work there. That makes sense.
Yeah, you should mention because it's going to DNR, correct?
Yes.
You should definitely mention Hawkins Cove. Link to the Hawkins Cove project since they care about ecological uplift and shoreline improvement, that kind of thing.
Definitely makes sense. Yeah.
Kathy?
It's directly above the Hawkins Cove project in part of, it actually will be integrated into it.
first, Jenny, thank you for working on the other letter. I jumped into comments and didn't say thank you for working on that. So thank you. And Dylan, this is an excellent letter. My one thought is that since this funding is through this Green Space Equity Program, is there a specific equity language we can also include in our letter? Is that important in the grant requirements?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Referencing back to CNI, this is a trail that would mainly serve that, public housing community of Harbor House. And so I think I could expand on that language a little bit and just highlight that this is a disadvantaged community.
Yeah, when you just say the names of the communities, but you should, some people at DNR are familiar, some are not. So you should say, when you say the names, say public housing communities that are home to the largest population of disadvantaged low-income residents of Annapolis.
Definitely. Okay. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Jackie.
I'm trying to remember at some point in the past, had there been a connector? I feel like I've either read or heard that somewhere that there used to be more of a connection between those areas.
There's a rough connection right now. It's kind of rudimentary.
We're calling it a cow path, and there's this rudimentary bridge that it was constructed after the last bridge had been destroyed by, I assume, some major storm. And it does cross directly over a step pool conveyance system.
No, there was a bridge there. There's rocks there right now you can kind of use. But then Public Works actually built a nice bridge there.
I see. So that's
I have photos of people walking over a very nice bridge. Someone actually lifted it up and took it away.
Oh, wow.
What?
It was pretty heavy. It was substantial.
Huh.
What do you suppose they did with it? Did they have a place that was
Maybe they had a stream in their own yard. I don't know.
Just pick up a bridge and take it home. Huh.
It was very audacious. Yeah.
Wow. Well, yeah, that's the current state of the trail. On the Truxton Park side of it, in the western portion of the trail, you can't even really see that it's a trail. There's a tiny little sign, and then there's just this an opening this wide. I'm not even joking. It looks like something from Lord of the Rings, like you're about to pass into the forest of spiders or something. So it's not accessible. It's not resilient, and it's just not conducive to a good trail experience, in my opinion. So we're looking to improve what's currently there.
Yeah. So how far is the proposed grant going to take accessibility? Are you talking about a paved trail or what level of trail?
So we're working with a design firm. I don't think we're going to be able to get it to ADA, but we're looking at adding in different boardwalk and different natural materials to make sure that the trail is still usable even after a major storm event. Just making sure that it's stable and consistent no matter the conditions.
Great.
Dylan, how long is it? How long is the trail?
I want to say it's roughly 1,000 feet.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Might be a bit more. I'll have to double check. Do you think we should add the exact length, Marianne?
Yeah. I mean, I would think the more specific you are, probably the better.
Sure.
Well, that's going to be in the proposal that's going in too.
Mm-hmm. Any other comments?
When's the application date on this one?
So we are hoping to put in this application, I believe, on Friday.
Okay, so quickly.
Yeah, quick turnaround. We had a powwow about this, I believe, last Friday, and it got mentioned that we should be including y'all and also the Conservancy Board. So I got a template letter, I believe, on Monday.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dylan, I have one more thought on this one.
Mhm.
Because I know this area, and you may want, I don't know if it's worth putting into this short letter, but just mentioning the existing route that people take if they're not in a car to get there is has narrow sidewalks, and there have been pedestrian and bike deaths on that road on Tyler, between the stretch of President Street and Truxton Park. So that might help
Yeah, and
from a
also
safety perspective.
it provides a way for people without a vehicle to get there quickly.
Mm-hmm.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, thank you.
So it's the pedestrian, promoting
Like a safe
pedestrian.
pedestrian route.
Yes, a safe pedestrian route, right?
Yeah.
And removing them from a busy road where there's safety issues. So you guys, with those changes you're suggesting, because this needs to go in on Friday, you can take a vote on this.
Mhm.
Dylan to add, I guess, Jeremy's signature to it on behalf of you, since you have a quorum.
Now, I mean, another thing we could do, and Jeremy, this is if you're comfortable with it, we can improve it now with these amendments, but obviously, like, it's not all fully written out. I'm not sure
Right.
if that's well with you.
Yeah, I'm
what
comfortable
I'm
with
saying.
that. Yeah, we've discussed it. I think we can. I'll work with you and make sure the language matches the feedback, and then I think I'll sign it, or Jenny and I can both sign it after we confirm with the vote. But also just a thought, if maybe we can explicitly mention as part of the expanding access to vital community resources, I think just emphasizing the water access that maybe we
Yeah.
don't have at Truxton right now because of the electrical issue, but that in theory we are making it easier for these residents to make use of like our premier sort of recreational areas of the city.
Well, yeah, so there's the water access, which you do have now, because I did the electrical study, and we can use the water now.
Oh, great.
Yeah,
Can
that
you-
that was as of last summer.
Oh, okay.
And so it's for additional water access both to Hawkins Cove and to the boat ramp area, and to additional trails at Truxton. It also provides access to the pool, the skate park, and the
that's
skate
right.
park.
Mhm.
So it's taking you into that, ties over to that entire area.
Mm-hmm. Summer camps are over there.
Summer camps, yep.
All
So
the stuff.
I think, vital resources is kind of doesn't really explain. So you need to say recreational resources such as.
Mhm.
Yeah, definitely makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I like that. All right. Well, any other questions from the group or comments?
Oh, the tennis courts are right there too, and the pickleball.
Both, right.
Yes, all the
Include
ball
tennis,
fields.
I won't include
All the ball
pickleball.
fields, yep.
Yeah.
Can't forget the pickleball.
No, don't forget that.
Okay.
Well, can we get a motion to approve the letter as amended?
Motion to approve the letter as amended.
Seconded.
The seconds, thank you. All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. All right, ayes have it. So I'll work with Dylan to get that letter wrapped up, signed, and ready for their submission Friday.
Fantastic. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. And Dylan, I did move this to the commission folder, but if you've got a version that you're actively editing or anything, just send me a link to that version, or Jenny and I a link to that version. You're
Okay.
still screen sharing. Just
Right. Thank you.
all right. So the third letter support, we're just lot going on. Was with respect to the whole Watershed Act. I think I mentioned this at the last month's meeting, that a bunch of organizations and watershed organizations like Severn River Association are in consultation with like the county and the Resilience Authority, really leading the charge along with the city to put together an application under the new whole Watershed Act, so that we can hopefully see the Severn selected as one of the watersheds that will get some consolidated and extra funding to really drive implementation towards restoring water quality and other related benefits to the watershed and the communities. So there's been one or two more meetings since then. I don't want to go too far into the weeds. I think for the commission, our role to play is pretty small. So I think the city staff have to come up with a list of their projects in the hopper and like how they're funding, plans for funding to count towards either match or that they're requesting. So there's a lot more work that the city itself has to do. But being members of the community, I figure as AEC, we can submit a letter just saying, we're in full support of the Severn being selected, especially because of the Weems Creek, College Creek, Spa Creek, and our local areas, and the benefits it could bring to water access, water quality, and everything else in our areas. So we'll be in support of that and just, I think, commit to, advocate to the city council and with cities and collaborate with city staff and work with the mayor to just make sure that this stays front and center for the 5-year period that this would cover if selected.
Yeah,
That all
exactly.
makes sense.
Yeah, Jeremy. So I think that is a letter I need to have prepared for you guys. I mean, would it help if I did a letter for you, just kind of like a Dylan did for the next meeting?
Yeah. If you were
Because I
willing
want
to
to
take a
make
stab.
sure that I hit the points that the Resilience Authority is, the county's kind of taking the lead in submitting the application to DNR, with the Resilience Authority backing them up like administratively. And then all of us have a role to play. But I want to make sure that the letter that we prepare is like hitting all the points that they want us to, so I can take a whack out of it, punt it over to, the group, to the Resilience Authority and the county leadership, and make sure, okay, is this what you want from the city? And I could do one from the city too, and from the Environmental Commission.
Yeah.
And then, sure it's in the shape they want it to be, hitting the points that they want. And then because I'm the staff liaison, one of the staff liaisons for that group, as you know, because you're participating as well. And then punt it on over to you guys, so it'd be ready for your November meeting.
Okay, that'd be great. Yeah, I assumed you'd be busy with your own letter and tasks. So if in the course of all that you're willing to draft the first letter
Yeah.
for us, I won't say no
It
to that.
shouldn't be a big lift. I was on a call I was on a call yesterday or today? Yesterday with them. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, saw you there.
Yeah, because I think the application is due December 1st, so we're kind of moving it fast, along, trying to get good draft going. And thank you, Jeremy, for participating in that as well. That effort and being there for as many meetings as you can. And we're having the Waterways Cabinet meeting tomorrow. And for some reason, you and Jenny didn't get put on the invitation list, I think, because some changes have been made in Rocio. Our administrative assistant did not catch them. So if you or Jenny cannot participate tomorrow, anyone else from this group can fill in for you tomorrow. We have our meeting at City Hall from 11 to 12:30 of the Waterways Cabinet. This topic will come up. It won't be a big subject, but it will come up. Many of the groups participating in the whole Watershed Act application will be there. And Roderer, who is the city's grant writer and Department of Public Works will be there because she is a big participant from the city side in this project, and she can explain it a little bit again. That's going on tomorrow from 11 to 12:30 at City Hall.
Yeah, I'm sad I'll have to miss that, but
Same.
I am have been curious just to know how we may all contribute. And like one thing that I've been wondering in those conversations is like how much the engagement plan is really getting built out, and like it's been unclear to me, like, do we really have to have all 5 years mapped out, or are we just like trying to establish we've got a plan, we've got the people, we've got the first couple of years sorted, but we've got the structure in place.
That was
later
one of the
years.
questions that came up this week was, for the match part especially, do we have to really show that we have the match as in money yet? And the answer we got from the Resilience Authority, because both of those fellas have been with DNR before, and what everyone else in the county, or the way we're looking at it until we're corrected, is no, as long as you have applied or you have planned, or this is, you're pretty sure this is what you're going to get money, or you're going to put that in your budget, we're taking that as that's good enough match. Because it's hard for any of us to say if we're definitely going to get money in 5 years for 5-year period, or a match for 5 years. So that's what we're going with until we're told no, because if we are selected, if the Severn River watershed is selected, there's a whole, like, in between January and March, a financial negotiation and scheduling process that will go on as a grantee, where they're going to sit down in DNR, the state's going to sit down with us and say, okay, we're going to pick you, but this is how you're going to get your money and over what period of time, for what projects, and we're going to want to know how you're going to match and how you're going to fund. So I think they're going to work with their grantees on how you get there.
Gotcha.
I wanted to also mention, speaking of Severn River Watershed, the Severn River Association did just recently put out their action plan, the Severn River Action Plan, that they're mapping out for the next several years, like where they want to do work, what their activity in each sub watershed of the Severn River will be. And they did an overall Severn River watershed plan. And then they said they were going to look at each sub watershed of the Severn River watershed. And the first area they really concentrated on was Weems Creek, which is within city limits, of course. And they developed priority actions within Weems Creek. And then they said after Weems Creek, they're going to do the same for each sub watershed. So that is up and live on their website. They even have it up on LinkedIn. So this commission may want to take a look at that, especially since their first priority action plan is Weems Creek. We may want to invite them to a future meeting.
Yeah, very good point.
Jesse Iliff may want to come to a future meeting.
Kathy.
Jenny, were you going to go to that meeting tomorrow, or did you all need somebody?
I won't be. I have to be in Baltimore tomorrow, so I won't be able to go.
Yeah, if it's 11 to 12:30, I could go.
I'd be happy if Kathy went in our place. That's okay.
It's in the City Hall conference room, Kathy.
Okay. Do I need any other info, or is there any
No,
background
if
information?
you get take a picture of your license plate, we can get you logged into the system within 15 minutes of your arrival, so you don't have to pay for parking.
Oh, should I send that to Dylan?
You can. But within 15 minutes of your arrival is when we do it. So you can just come up with, take a photo or whatever, and we give it to our admin, and she'll log you into the system.
Okay. So 15 minutes before I get there.
No, once you get there, we've got 15 minutes to log you in. Yep.
Okay. I'll send it to you
That's
guys.
why we
You guys
tell
give me
people,
time.
take a photo, walk in, and we'll get Rocio to
Oh, I
put your
see.
info in.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Sounds good.
Thank you, Kathy. Well, and a question, Jackie, if that's something else I've been unclear about is, can like Seven River Association or others count monitoring program costs towards the match? Because I know obviously that's not implementation, but I know the intent of the act is to like demonstrate success and
Yeah.
gains. So monitoring kind of seems essential.
Yeah, monitoring does seem essential. You know, if we do anything you implement before July of 2025 does not count, but any design, planning, anything like that does not count against you. So we could be designing and everything like that. And as long as you don't start doing it right away before July, we can count it.
Yeah, because I imagine, all the different, I mean, Spa Creek Conservancy, Seven River Association,
Yep.
and others will continue monitoring. So
Yep.
definitely want to.
But any monitoring they do after that,
Yeah.
I think we could use.
Jeremy, I just have a general question. This is, if I don't know if this is the right place for the answer, but just about monitoring with these organizations, is there a general rule? Like, are people or organizations monitoring the water quality installations pretty much regularly all the time, or is it here and there?
I think it's different rules for the actual installations or projects versus the like ambient water quality that like Spa Creek Conservancy does.
Okay.
And I don't think every organization does water quality monitoring, Jenny.
Okay, so you're talking about regular monitoring of, is it swimmable, fecal coliform kind of thing in the larger water bodies, not the actual monitoring of the installations. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, ideally there's both happening out there,
Yeah.
but
I've just been curious. I don't know how often that happens on the installations, and I've just been curious about that.
Yeah. When it comes to water quality installations for MS4, that does have to be inspected at least once every 3 years. But that's just MS4.
Yeah, great question. That would be if we had the right people to answer that question, we could be here for a couple hours.
Yeah, I know. That's a big one. That's why I was like, I don't know if this is the right place for the answer, but
I know that a lot of the city has updated its database, but to weed out those that are not functioning anymore, those that are worthy of repair, and those that are functioning, but because we had a lot that were installed by well-intentioned groups that just didn't maintain them. So maintenance is a very big concern of the cities.
Yeah. If you actually fail to demonstrate after a 3-year period that an MS4, well, an installation that you're claiming for MS4 credit is functioning, you actually cannot claim that credit anymore.
Okay.
That's one incentive. But again, it's just for MS4 installations. Not all installations are for MS4.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Well, we will get the draft letter from Jackie ahead of our next meeting and build on that and take a vote at that time. That gives us enough wiggle room. There is some other templates, Jackie, that I have copied over. I haven't started working on yet, though, as far as like information. So if there's other things I can do just to build out that stuff for the commission when it comes time for the larger application, happy to help with that.
Okay.
Just let me know where I can help.
Okay.
So I think we can move on. We are a little behind, but we added an extra letter, so no big deal. We'll take some, and I think we can only take time out of the update side from Dylan and just let Dylan instead focus on the draft resilience plan and then any other updates or highlights. So Dylan.
Alrighty. Right. So today, I'm happy to show sort of what I'm calling right now the draft resilience plan framework. So basically, this document is created to provide us some guidance as to how we would like to move forward with our planning efforts, kind of taking stock of what's been done in the past roughly 5 years. Sorry, Jackie, were you saying something?
No, go ahead. Mine's just my car.
So can you all see it on my screen right now?
I think you probably want to zoom in a little more.
Sure. Okay. And just quick note, this was in Google Docs and then it went into Word, then to PDF, and now I've reopened it in Google Docs from the PDF. So it's going to be a little discombobulated, but yeah, so basically we're pulling different documents, primarily, I can scroll down, the military installation resilience review, the hazard mitigation plan, the comprehensive plan, and some other plans that are tangentially involved with resilience. I want to highlight that this is a climate resilience plan. So we're really only focusing on stressors from the climate. And so if we go through this contents page, and again, it's discombobulated, but we're really looking at these climate stressors, extreme weather events, sea level rise, extreme heat, and ecosystem degradation. So there's other things that might be stressful on the city due to climate change, but these are the things right now that we have the data to support, are things that we do need to be planning for. And so in this document, I'm kind of laying out where we're at, what our data is, and how we should be moving forward, and what the planning process should really be looking like based on what we have. So we have some vulnerability assessments that have been done, particularly in the hazard mitigation plan, in the military installation resilience review. The hazard mitigation plan was fairly thorough in terms of sea level rise. However, with things such as, say, urban heat, they didn't go too much into how that might impact the future of the city. So I'm going to go over those vulnerabilities. And then, as Kathy pointed out, in the comprehensive plan, we are supposed to be incorporating, and rightly so, those communities that are of increased social vulnerability. So these are communities that have a lesser ability to recover from climate stressors and climate events. And then we'll move over into goals that have been established. And then, we can add on to these, but this is just as right now, the pulling from our documents, what climate goals we currently have. Our implementation framework. So this will lay out roles, responsibilities, potential funding, resources, timeline, milestones, and climate governance. And then we'll talk about strategies, monitoring and evaluation. And then, of course, we're going to have the appendices in here. So that's just kind of like the breakdown of how the contents is going through. I mean, it's a pretty extensive document. In this Google Doc right now, I have, I think, just 91 pages, but with the appendices and everything, it comes out to, I think, about 350 or something. So I want to make this digestible for everyone. I don't want to get too into the weeds with the wording about the introduction. I think we all have a pretty general idea of what that's going to look like. I think the purpose of my presentation to you all today is to sort of get your feedback as to how this is structured and how we should be pulling from these documents, and your thoughts on some of the data, and maybe the framework of how we're going to be doing this. And once we're kind of in agreement with that, I am comfortable sharing the drafts, obviously not for public distribution, but just for us to review more thoroughly. And then we can talk about it at a later meeting before we start to move forward with contemplating if we're going to be contracting out with a consultant firm, and really finalizing or rather formalizing this planning process. So I'll move over into the methodology because that's a bit more substantive. And you're going to have to forgive some word vomit in here. So in the methodology, I describe it as the climate resilience plan of the city of Annapolis will be an iterative process that will build a framework for implementation that addresses the gaps in the city's ability to address climate change. So the first step is developing a resilience planning framework based on the existing documents which are relevant to climate resilience. And these include the Military Installation Resilience Review, the 2040 Comprehensive Plan, the Hazard Mitigation Plan, and its accompanying Flood Resilience Plan. These documents have laid the groundwork for the city's climate goals, its key climate threats, and the network of stakeholders and recommended framework for how to implement the necessary improvements to the community's infrastructure. However, these plans present large gaps as none have been intended to address all future scenarios and how related vulnerabilities will be addressed. The next step is evaluating the climate risks to the most thorough extent possible, including stressors such as sea level rise and extreme heat, and certain phenomena such as tornadoes are not yet fully projectable based on climate change and thus will not be heavily factored in implementation. Other phenomena are more intricate to understand the impact on Annapolis specifically and may require technical assistance be provided to the city. Next, the city will compare these stressors with the capacity of existing infrastructure and ecosystem services. And so I want to just break from the flow of this document. When I'm talking about comparing those stressors that I'm talking about above, like I mentioned, sea level rise, urban heat, XYZ, there's going to be, our key infrastructure, our bridges, our water treatment plants, XYZ, and then of course our ecosystem services. But what I would like to do is take those and then take those climate stressors and say, okay, well, based on these situations, how are these specific pieces of our community going to be impacted? So vulnerability assessments should accompany a projected business as usual scenario for pieces of infrastructure and developments as a whole, including the current trend of deforestation, impervious surface growth, and design standards for structures in stormwater and flood management. Climate scenarios will be mapped and overlaid with land use scenarios and evaluated to conduct several scales of vulnerability assessment, borrowing from the aforementioned documents when possible. Direct and indirect vulnerabilities will be addressed, including the indirect risk communities should a storm directly impact a piece of infrastructure, such as a dam. Communities' difficulties responding to climate change will be analyzed, such as the proportion of residents who speak English as a second language, income, median age, access to food and other key resources, etc. So after these risks and vulnerabilities are fully addressed, potential solutions can be explored. Strategies should maintain consistency with current plans, work, and programs. It's likely that several risks and climate response issues are yet to be addressed, and thus this plan will provide guidelines for missing strategies in response to those projections. Strategies will be weighed by their risk of failure, cost, distribution to town character, and Annapolitan way of life, as well as the risk of redundancy. So that's a lot, and I don't think this review process is going to be quick or easy, but does anyone have any questions, concerns, suggestions for how this methodology works?
I do not. Anyone else? Okay.
Okay.
Carry on.
I can move on. So like I'm saying, we're borrowing from a lot of the resources and plans that have been done before. And the Military Installation Resilience Review, obviously we're talking about Annapolis as a defense community and how Annapolis should be coordinating with the naval administration about how we need to be planning our infrastructure cohesively so that one project isn't impacting another in a negative way. So they have provided a framework that allowed for a planning process that was mutually beneficial. And I felt it was wise to incorporate that planning framework into this plan. Kathy, I hate to call you out, but I am looking for your input on this matter because I know that you work with the resilience plans in general. But to summarize, the planning framework has guided the city's efforts to assess, plan, prioritize, and implement resilience strategies and infrastructure projects with special attention given to the unique resilience requirements for NSA Annapolis. The planning framework provides methods to assess vulnerabilities and risks not only independent, but also in coordination with threats to installation resilience. The planning framework provides a risk-informed, phased approach to identify and prioritize investments for resilience projects and foster partnership opportunities. And so it's got 4 stages to design a robust and multifunctional resilience network. And it's a little blurry. It's talking about a planning team, study area, data and resources, and then a broader resilience network. And that gets broken down a little bit more later on. And then we'll be conducting a shared vulnerability and risk assessment. I see we have a broken bubble here. And then conceptualize and prioritize impactful projects, identify funding sources, and implement resilience projects. So again, this is coming from a framework model for defense communities that was used in the Military Installation Resilience Review, done in collaboration with the Naval Administration, Annapolis, and also the consulting firm Stantec. And so I'm just talking a bit about how that plan, the MER, brought together different staff, also from Anne Arundel County, Maryland DNR, and other local leaders. To expand, we've got examples of businesses and service professionals who could be included. And this actually came from the National Institute of Standards and Technology, their guide for community resilience planning. So we've got chambers of commerce, community business districts, building owners and managers, utility providers, health workers, architects and urban planners, engineers, developers, and media. And then also volunteer organizations and community organizations. We're talking about NGOs, national voluntary organizations for disaster, community associations, and community service organizations, and then as well as religious groups. So building off from that framework, I felt it was wise that we should identify a geographic focus. So basically classifying areas by their unique climate risks. So there's certain areas that are obviously going to be at higher risk of sea level rise. There's certain areas that are going to be at higher risk of urban heat island. I think we talked about this at our last meeting. And then of course, different areas and different other climate stressors. And then based on that geographic focus and those classifications, we can really start to break down, how those areas and their infrastructure and ecosystem services are going to be impacted by those key stresses of concern. And then I break down their review and approval process, which I think for the sake of this meeting is worth going over. But again, it's going to be a bit of a lengthy explanation, but this is per the guidance of the Community Resilience Planning Guide. The planning team needs to determine an appropriate level of detail for the published plan. The adequacy, feasibility, and clarity of the plan should be key criteria for determining the level of detail. The team should include documents that help explain the proposed plan and recommend solutions, but only include summaries of analyses, publishing the depth and data documentation elsewhere. Planners should estimate the resources needed to execute the plan and should indicate its level of accuracy, including explanation of assumptions. Some solutions may require further analysis before accurate estimates can be developed. The need for resources should be acknowledged and a subgroup of fund seekers should be established. Possible funding mechanisms can be identified, including proposed redirection of funding from other planned projects. And then the plan review, the planning team should develop and implement an outreach strategy to be certain that the community at large is aware of and understands the plan, and to increase appreciation of and support for the approach. Outreach should be an integral part of the team's operation and its initial launch, and that outreach strategy should include various engagement efforts as planning proceeds. And so I talk about, those different outreach strategies, and just moving on to, for the sake of brevity. Changes should be expected during this review process as the larger community weighs in on the community resilience plan. It is likely that compromises will need to be made to reflect stakeholders' varying points of view. Vigorous discussion is often a prerequisite for a plan that reflects a diverse community. Healthy engagement at this level and during the plan's review may lead to a plan of action that garners broad support and a level of commitment necessary for long-term success and improving community resilience. And then I go into plan approval, but that's a political process that we're all familiar with. Again, I'm going to pause. I know this is dense, so I just want to see if anyone has any thoughts or feelings about the framework, about the methodology, XYZ.
Hey, Dylan, I think what we need to do is just first brush at this. I doubt anyone has gone through this document yet. And that what we're doing is at this point, you've just gone through all the many plans, policies, studies, the city has put together the last few years and it's all together. And the plan analysis and decided we need to do a more robust study with a contractor based on those. But the second part of it is the climate plan. And maybe you should talk a little bit about the climate plan, like a rough outline of what we're planning to do with the climate plan.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And that is the next part of the document. So, it's definitely doable. And I can definitely talk about that later. So yeah, I think Jackie's right. I think this is maybe too in-depth at the moment. So I will move on to the climate risks that have been identified in the comprehensive plan, hazard mitigation plan, and the MER.
And Kathy does have her hand raised. Kathy, you have a question?
Oh, yeah, no, I was just, it's been a while since I've looked at the Naval Academy's plan. I did look at it a long time ago. So if you want to use their framework, I mean, that's something I'd like to look at a little more closely.
Sure.
My name there. So happy to move on to the next section, but just I would like to kind of have a closer review of that offline.
I think you should. I mean, I was involved with the MER, and I'm not 100% a huge fan of the MER. So happy to talk to you about it offline.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think that's part of the point of this exercise, to just kind of get a feel for what we think is actually useful from previous planning exercises and making sure that we're not shelving something that shouldn't be shelved. So definitely that's a conversation we should be having. Okay. So moving on to this climate stressors. So I had mentioned them above. We've got extreme weather events. And, the MER and the hazard mitigation plan, rightly so, they address this matter. And I've kind of color-coded it as to what they were saying. What it's in black is what I've basically added as a preliminary assessment. But according to the hazard mitigation plan, her global assessments, such as the NCA4 projects various major trends over the next 25 to 100 years relevant to coastal hazards and future event probability. The strongest hurricanes are expected to become more frequent and more intense and result in more rainfall. And additionally, coastal hazard events interacting with sea level rise amplify many hazard impacts. And then what's interesting about that statement, and it's kind of the consensus that I think you find among a lot of, I want to say in sort of surface level documentation. What I did appreciate about the MER is that it did talk about, where the current consensus is among the scientific community. And the MER found that NOAA's literature review does not provide compelling evidence for a substantial greenhouse warming-induced century-scale increase in frequency of tropical storms, hurricanes, or major hurricanes, or in the proportion of hurricanes that become major hurricanes. The frequency is expected to remain the same across the baseline, mid, and end-of-century timeframes with a 10% annual probability. So my point isn't that the MER is right and the hazard mitigation plan is wrong. It's that, I think in the context of planning for hurricanes, in the context of climate change in Annapolis, we really need to make sure that we're being very thorough with our analysis. We don't want to put resources planning for things to be more severe, and then in the end, they don't actually end up being all that much more severe.
That's not an accurate statement, I don't think. I think they said that the frequency, and that it's consistent with other scientific findings, the frequency may not increase, but the intensity of those storms will increase. So you do have to factor it in.
Yeah,
Right.
we're seeing that. We've just seen that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's the intensity which is the problem.
Yeah, and I go into that a little bit here, kind of trying to ride that fine line between these documents. Is the frequency increasing? Is it just the intensity increasing? Where is it increasing? Is it just in those major storms? Is it in all storms? And yes, there seems to be consensus that of those major, most severe storms, there is an increased intensity. But I think we really need to paint a more clear picture as to what the situation really is. So that's why I talk about it here.
So
yes.
I do have a question. Since I know I've heard of, and we've talked about the MER and some of these other plans or documents in the past, but I'm trying to recall, like, just how recent are some of these versus others? And I'm just asking to just as a way of saying some of these things, if they're several years old at this point, may be worth discounting a little more than, say, others that were more recent and have the updated science or tools available to them. So you've probably already thought of that, but just making that point again.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think the science is changing really fast. I'm actually part of a group that's working with DNR on the Maryland flood survey, and the tool that's going to be coming out, I think, later, probably actually next year, if not later this year. And it's going to have all the mapping. It's a really cool tool, and you'll be able to show water depth and different scenarios over time, all over Maryland. It's the Maryland flood mapping tool. Both Dave Mandel and Office of Emergency Management and I are advisors on this tool. So it's got everything as you're pointing out, Jeremy, is changing really fast on the science and on even the technology that maps.
Did Jackie cut out for everyone else?
Yeah, and the last part there.
Yeah, Jackie, I think you're going in and out.
Oh, okay. Did you catch the part about the Maryland mapping tool?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, it's coming. That'll be coming out later this year, early next year. It's to Jeremy's point that the science
really fast, and even the technology that maps it. So we just have to pay attention to it.
Definitely. Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, there's been so many new tools coming out in just the last few years.
Yeah.
And this is, I think I referenced it earlier, we want to be making sure that we are consistently checking on this data. And we want to make sure this is a living document. So we want to make sure that the way we're going about, planning and implementing is incorporating that new data, and that we're always reviewing the methodology and ensuring that the applicability of this data is rightly to Annapolis. We can talk about global trends, but we're really concerned about Annapolis itself. So I think you guys are right on the money, and we do need to be talking about how specific and how accurate is the data we're going to be using to make our decisions. And that's absolutely the point of this exercise, of this climate risk portion of the plan.
I think it's good about us doing this is that so much of the time, people focus on the sea level rise and the flooding aspects of it, and we're not focusing enough on the other climate risks.
Definitely.
And that's what this resilience plan is getting at, and all the other aspects that, come into play with that, such as our utilities. We're talking about heating and cooling, temperature rise, and how are we going, or can our utilities keep up to speed with what we need? Other things food deserts,
Mhm.
all of it.
Yeah, yeah. And I noticed that in a lot of these plans, they don't really talk a whole lot about the dangers of significant ecosystem degradation. And Jackie, you're kind of just referencing, the cold is an important part of our ecosystem processes. And so, if we're having winters where we're basically not even having frost anymore, how is that going to have an impact on our local biodiversity and our local environmental function and our ecosystem services?
Right.
So that's, we're going to get into that. But yeah, I mean, we're trying to make this as holistic as possible, like Jackie's saying.
And before you get rolling again, I do just want to do a quick time check, since the remaining part of the agenda is updates from you and Jackie. I want to make sure if there's anything important, you'll have adequate time. So we can, this is still certainly a priority, I think, right, for right now, our discussion right now. So
Yeah.
maybe.
I mean, part of the reason I send you those resilience, John, you did send them the resilience sustainability highlights, right?
For which month?
Dylan?
I don't know if did we get one for October?
For
I know we
October.
did for September. I don't know if I saw one for October.
No, I must have missed that.
You're breaking up a bit for me, Jackie.
Well, if he didn't, he will.
Right.
So
Keep my
the
eyes
reason
open.
we send those out is just to keep you guys abreast of what's going on. And if we don't get to things during meetings, those are topics you can always call us about on your own, or we can discuss it another time. So I think it's in the remaining time, I think we just could focus on the resilience plan.
Sounds good to me. Carry on, Dylan. Thank you.
Okay. So yeah, moving back on to tornadoes, this was something that was addressed in the hazard mitigation plan. But they basically summed up, and this again, like we're talking about earlier with data, it may change. We are seeing that there seems to be changes linked to climate change, but the scientific understanding isn't really detailed enough to project direction and magnitude of future change. So as of now, assessing tornado risk and how we should be planning for that in the context of climate change, I don't think is an endeavor that we should stress too much about. But as we consult with constituents, stakeholders, other agencies, technical partners, that might come up. But as of right now, it doesn't seem to be of serious concern. Flash flooding, of course, is going to be something that we'll have increased concern about. Just some, very surface level data. A tool known as First Street Technology says that by 2050, we're expecting 1.4 inches of rain about 12 times per year, up from 10 times. So that's a 20% increase. And then I've actually got a document or a picture below, basically a figure below, showing the changes in rain events compared to what's historic average. So we've got 1981 to 2010 as the black bar, and then in future years, based on different climate models, we're seeing that increased events in those colored bars. So we're going to see increased rain events in pretty much every month, and that could have various impacts, especially when compounded with decreased amount of forest and increased impervious surface in a business as usual scenario. Thunderstorm risks, it's projected to increase a little bit. Planning around this, I'm not sure how it's really going to differ from hurricane risk. I'm going to move on. That's something that we should maybe consider looking at. Winter storm risk. So the hazard mitigation plan said that climate communication, science, and outreach, climate change is fueling an increase in the intensity and snowfall of winter storms. The atmosphere now holds more moisture, and that in turn drives heavier and precipitation. Sometimes I struggle with that, including heavier snowfall and the appropriate conditions. And that's true in in the context of when we do get a major blizzard or winter storm. But overall, obviously, we're going to see decreased winter storms and snow events. And again, we're looking at a similar figure here with the black bar representing historic averages, and then these colored bars and these line graphs representing projected averages in different months. And so we're seeing that, by around the year 2060, we really might not be seeing much snow at all, period, on average each year. And we're kind of already seeing that, really. Moving on to sea level rise, I think we're all very familiar with sea level rise in the city at this point.
Can I
Yes.
ask a quick question? Nor'easters were a separate category, right? Because I think that even though we might have less snow, we do get nor'easters
Mhm.
in the winter, which aren't considered winter storms, but that was a separate category, I think, that you had earlier.
Yeah, so you've got hurricanes and nor'easters in here. This is sort of how it was
Okay.
addressed in previous documents, kind of breaking up the differences here and how it might impact the city could be a worthwhile endeavor. Are you recommending that?
I'm not sure I actually know enough. I just know that I'm not sure what our nor'easter risk is. I just know that when they do hit, they do cause a lot of erosion, and they can cause a lot of damage. So I'm not sure, just something maybe to think about how to address that.
Sure, definitely. We can mark that down. Any other comments? Okay. So moving on to sea level rise. So I don't think I need to talk too much about this. We know the sea level rise is happening. The MER, the hazard mitigation plan, which includes a flood resilience plan, are pretty consistent, and they're using essentially the same tool, the NOAA sea level rise and coastal flooding impacts tool. So we've got some figures here, just talking about by the year 2100. This is kind of what state of sea level rise and its flooding, sunny day flooding might be in the city. And then we've also got days where we experience high tide flooding in the city, and we're potentially seeing, depending on the emissions, but in the higher emissions scenario, we're pretty much seeing sunny day flooding in the city every day. And it's obviously going to be increasing pretty much at an exponential rate, plateaus a little bit at some point. But,
So
yes,
it looks like the second mark there is 100 days. Aren't we already like close to 100 this year? Because I know we just shattered the record.
It might be based on a certain level of flooding, because I think right now we're experiencing sunny day flooding at City Dock, but I think this is talking about kind of throughout the community. But the exact methodology is something that we can definitely break down in this. That's a good point.
Thank you.
So moving on to extreme heat. This is something that's addressed in the comprehensive plan and the hazard mitigation plan. This is one concern that I don't think has been broken down enough, just because of how much of a legitimate public health crisis this could be. We know it's expected to increase different years. It's going to continue to increase. And so in these graphs below, and this is by the USGS, just to clarify, we're seeing average mean daily temperature. We're talking about days per year with a maximum temperature above 95, and then those actual days of above 105, which historically we haven't had any, but we're already starting to see those days here and there. And then by the year 2100, we might see around 10 days we're experiencing that level of heat. And in the explanation above, I'm talking about our current state of tree canopy, our projected increase in impervious surface, and how that urban heat island effect might create certain areas that could be experiencing 115 degrees Fahrenheit or more. And in those communities of higher vulnerability, they might, if they lose power Do they have, access to a car where they can get themselves to a cooler area? Are these communities of a certain median age that are at higher risk? So breaking down how increased heat in the city of Annapolis might seriously impact our way of life, I think is going to be an endeavor that, like I said, hasn't been done too thoroughly before, but I think it's going to be very important. And I've got a heat island map that was done with NOAA in the city. It was included in the comprehensive plan. And this just shows kind of the current state. I think we were talking about it in the last meeting. This is, I believe, the design district, that more industrial West Street area. And we're seeing, the areas in the city with the most urban heat island effect are in that area. And it makes sense, right? You have low tree canopy and you have a lot of impervious surface. So that area is particularly vulnerable. And you can see it throughout the city as well. Drought, not of a major concern, but we may have increased risk of drought. Potential increased fire risk. This is yes.
Sorry, I'm getting feedback. I'm not sure if that's coming through you, Dylan. Sorry. Yeah, and thinking of drought and the other storms we've been talking about, I am especially interested in the drought because it's when you have the droughts followed by those extreme events that you see some of the worst erosion or loss of vegetation and things. So definitely want to see that section built out a little more, because I think we don't talk enough about how that in tandem with the others can really cause some severe damage to our practices or to our other infrastructure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think when it comes to drought, I think a very thorough analysis would have to be done, just because, like you're saying, it really hasn't been taken too seriously here. But this line graph shows, we're going to have these evaporation deficits. And if it goes on for a significantly long period, we could actually see that risk really compounding in the city. And then you couple that, that dryness and that increased heat with increased fire risk. We might have to start talking about design standards and different things like that to ensure that, we're compensating for that increased risk. I go into ecosystem degradation. This is something that's not talked about substantially in these previous planning documents. I tried to provide some previous aerial imagery of the city in approximately 1990s, kind of just showing, what the tree canopy kind of looked like, and then an aerial imagery of what it looks like now. Obviously, we want to use more, telling resources to really show where it's increased and where it's dropped, to kind of provide us a bit of a trend analysis visually for people to appreciate. And so, yeah, that's basically the assessment of the climate risks. And then, we can talk about the vulnerabilities and how they've been assessed in those planning documents. But just, wanted to take any questions or comments about the methodology and different things.
Yeah, Marianne, I see your hand.
Yeah, just a side issue on the tree canopy. I talked to Brian Adams a couple weeks ago, and he's in the process of redoing the assessment, the canopy assessment with new software.
Right.
And I think I don't know if you talked to him, but I mean, it's supposed to be available fairly soon. So it might be good to get him to meet with us over the next couple of months, or maybe even early in the year, just to go over his findings.
Yeah, definitely. And that's, going to be a regular thing among, different city staff and other stakeholders, right, to weigh in on their findings of their particular area of concern.
Right. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Great. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. So we'll move on to vulnerabilities. Again, borrowing from the framework that was provided in the MUR, and then also borrowing from their reference document, Advancing Resilience for Defense Communities, kind of this matrix that they provided that can help people understand the different aspects of risk. Whether or not there's an immediate consequence, whether or not the likely is high or low. And as I was talking about earlier, the hazard mitigation plan was fairly thorough in their analysis. For sea level rise, they were referencing crab inundation, the climate resilience action boundary, which is a 1% flood event with 3 feet of sea level rise. And it goes into, apartments and residential condos, different things, and breaking down the costs. So, we're talking about flood damage in a future scenario of 3 feet of sea level rise, totaling about $43 million versus that current sea level or current sea levels being about $30 million. So that's a $13 million difference pretty much every time that flood event happens. And so that's obviously a substantial increase in damages. And I do appreciate how they were able to break down different facilities. And they included key facilities and public facilities in their costs. And they even broke it down to different scenario, 2 feet of sea level rise. And then, that total was of a different amount. Their exact methodology, because you can see there's actually a higher difference here than above with a 3 feet of sea level rise. It was a little unclear to me, so I think I'll need to review that one more time and talk with them about exactly what that analysis was and how it was done. But I think a lot of the legwork on sea level rise and its infrastructure impacts has been done, and so I don't think we have to reinvent the wheel on that too much. And then below, I'm talking about what the MER has done for different facilities and different pieces of infrastructure. I didn't go too in depth as to how they had done these analyses and where the damage might be, but they did assess a few things. They assessed access roads, a wastewater treatment plant, pumping stations, the water treatment plant, and they assessed these as high and the access roads as a shock risk. But I'm commenting here that we should also be assessing our public transportation, our power supply and our grid, our stormwater conveyance system, our habitat and biodiversity. We should be assessing our key bridges and our dams, and then those properties which were found vulnerable after that geographic overlay that I was referencing earlier. And then I go into those communities of increased social vulnerability. But I'll take a pause to discuss the vulnerability assessments and sort of the tools for how we're going to be doing that going forward.
I'll jump in. In those existing studies, I think I saw pumping stations and the treatment plants, but what about all the pipes and other parts of the infrastructure? Is that included? Do you know?
As far as I'm aware, it was not included. And again, the exact thoroughness of it all was a bit vague, and exactly how it was done was a bit vague too. I mean, I'm assuming that there was some sort of separate, full analysis document that I'd like to get my hands on. But as far as I'm aware, no, that was not really assessed.
Okay.
So yeah, good question.
Well, just thought I'd bring that up, especially if you're looking at either having a contractor look at the MS4, the storm sewer system, maybe the rest of the other sewers systems would be worth considering as well, because we just had some events as you know, the last couple of years of those pipes bursting.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. I mean, we're talking about it. We're also funding a ton of money for these MS4 projects and these other stormwater projects. Have we really assessed, is our entire stormwater conveyance system actually going to be able to withstand, these more intense storms, increased rain, and other compounding effects? I'm not sure how familiar everyone is with stormwater conveyance systems, but if you've got sea level rise coming in, you've got certain pipes being filled up with water, and then now you've got some sort of catchment basin upstream that's now not able to drain that water, and now you've got your Safeway flooding because there's 1 foot of sea level rise downtown, right? So like this is all interconnected, and understanding how we should be adjusting development standards and prioritizing different points of our conveyance system to be restored or altered. I think it's going to be really important to get a good holistic picture of what needs to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well
good
said.
point.
Thank you.
Right, so that's the vulnerabilities there. I'm going to get into communities of increased vulnerability. I believe it's around page 30. I had to reference back to the PDF. It's resilient schools. So I provided sort of like a surface level view of our vulnerable communities. This is not really assessed in those previous documents, but I do talk about food deserts as provided by the USDA. So these are areas that, obviously we all know what that is, but they're low income tracts, which have more than 100 households and do not have a vehicle and are more than half a mile from the nearest supermarket. So that's our situation in this particular area. This is a low income community. This is for harbor houses, that Hacka property that we were talking about earlier. We have a lot of people there who don't have access to a vehicle and who aren't, within a short distance to a supermarket. So that's an area of increased concern. We have the, northwestern downtown area, also known as the Clay Street area. A particular concern because of status of its low income. And then, we have kind of a reference to those geographic overlays earlier. We might not be able to go into the census data or the EPA screen or something and pull out, okay, well, this is a community of concern, but we do understand from our institutional knowledge that this is an area where we're going to have increased urban heat island. So we should be understanding, okay, well, this is their climate stressor. What sort of social impacts will that have in tandem with that climate stressor? Will they be able to recover? If the power grid goes down, like I was saying earlier, I'm going to be experiencing a 115-degree day and not have AC. So understanding, where extra resources might need to go based on that, I think is going to be important. And I provided a more thorough analysis of social vulnerabilities in the appendix at the bottom of the document. But that's the matter of vulnerability. Does anyone have any comments about how we're assessing social vulnerabilities? Okay. And then just cap off. Sorry, Jeremy, did you want to add something?
No, I was just gonna fill the silence and say, looking off to a great start. Obviously the EJ screen is where I'd go first too, so you're on top of it.
Great. Right, and so to finish off, I think it's appropriate to talk about our goals, and these are those that were established in the comprehensive plan. We're talking about our resilience efforts being comprehensive, equitable, and relevant. And they included performance measures that the resilience plan is adopted by 25, with annual updates on implementation. Performance measure 2, the CIP includes resilience-related projects and all awards. And they break that down a bit more. We're talking about equity. We're talking about equitable resilience for communities of higher social vulnerability, resilience hubs. We're talking about neighborhood scale resilience investments. He says, see Chapter 4, land use for more detail on the Creekshed planning framework. Talking about working with Anne Arundel County to leverage the full capabilities of the newly created Resilience Authority, which we're actively doing. Working with, our administrative partners. It's kind of echoed below there in terms of stakeholders. I even referenced Weather It Together and the goals there. So we're talking about public awareness, flood adaptation, build back better, aligning land use and economic development, which I think is important. and then funding public improvements and incentivizing private investment for flood adaptation. And then there's the hazard mitigation plans, goals, implementing and enforcing floodplain management ordinance, to integrate hazard mitigation planning, recommendations, and mitigation strategies, ensure that public funds are used in the most efficient and cost-effective manner. It's very important. Encourage property owners' self-protection and mitigation measures, protect infrastructure and facilities, create awareness, protect and restore environmentally sensitive areas, aid city departments to ensure the continued operation and continuity of emergency services, improve coordination and communication, and protect existing community assets, including critical facilities from damage and impacts caused by natural hazards. So again, that was a lot, but I think it gives you a very good picture of, kind of where we're at and how we would like to move forward. So with your comments and concerns, XYZ, I'd like to just take this back house again, polish it up a little bit, and then we can more thoroughly go over it for future discussions.
Yeah, because I'd appreciate the opportunity when you're ready to be able to actually, read through it. I'm better at thinking sometimes when I'm reading rather than when I'm listening, but this was an excellent presentation and thank you. And a ton of work. And I just happened to Google the Annapolis Hazard Mitigation Plan. And since it's 500 some pages long, I definitely commend you having reviewed that and all the other plans too.
Thank you, Kathy.
Go ahead, Jenny.
Yeah. Do any of the other plans address economics, the economy, and shocks to the marketplace kind of thing?
I know that the hazard mitigation plan talks about the direct economic impact, to like structures and things like that, but I don't think there's too much of a thorough analysis as to like the broader, indirect impact on, systems of trade and things like that.
No,
Okay.
there's no one city study that does that. No, I'm going to get the date wrong. So I think it was 2018 or something. Stanford University did a study of Annapolis and the economic impacts of flooding, of just flooding on the city. They saw us as ground zero for nuisance flooding impacts. And so that study was looking at nuisance flooding impacts on a city caused by climate change. And I believe we have that on our website. And it was done by Stanford University. And it was something in the $100,000, $150,000 range of nuisance flooding on the city every year. And that was before we put in those small sump pump system that we use now. It was when like every time it rained, and you tried to come from Eastport, you couldn't. They closed the Spa Creek Bridge. So that was not a city study, obviously. That was commissioned by a university.
Very cool.
But I don't think our Office of Economic Policy has ever done a economic analysis.
Great question, Jenny. And something else I was wondering as thinking about this large plan is sort of the recreational aspect, and this may tie into the economic as well, but with the water access plan and everything else, like if we're planning to expand our water access network, maybe having a small section at least somewhere, just considering how all the factors and stressors you mentioned could impact that, and how I think that's important for us to consider as well.
Yeah, I mean, definitely in terms of the context of increased heat, we want to make sure that A, our waters are healthy enough for people to swim in, but B, that people have the access to the water. Definitely.
Yeah. Any other questions, comments for Dylan? Well, let me ask, Dylan, since we kind of took in a lengthier review this month, you still want to bring this back next month for a meeting and dive back in, or what are you thinking?
It's entirely up to you. I'm just a staff.
All right, Kathy?
What's the timeline? Maybe you mentioned this and I missed it. The timeline for this plan.
So that's still kind of in the works. We've pulled together what we have. We're creating a framework. We're talking with you all about, how we're going to move forward. But, we need to sort of get more stakeholders involved and sort of see what the general community vision is for what this is going to be first. So I can try to.
You had been given kind of a end date when it was supposed to be complete.
Yeah, it did say 2025 in the comprehensive plan, but in terms of a month of 2025, I'm not sure. I always try to meet
something like this.
Yeah. You
Like a year
between the
from
lines
now.
of what I'm saying. But I think again, we're gonna have to sort of feel this around a bit more before we can really get an idea of the exact timeline and when the final date might be. A good question.
Yeah, great. Well,
So Jeremy, are you thinking that instead of another discussion, we'd have the chance to actually look at what's on paper before we come back to discuss it again? Because I know that would be most helpful for me before I discuss it, to be able to actually like go through it and look at it, but I'm not sure what Dylan's timeline is to give us.
right.
We don't have a timeline on it yet. This was an exercise to first gather what we had, what information we had from all the many plans the city and all the information the city has. First to gather, see what we have and where our gaps are in information.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then to go from there, to assess where we were and then figure out what we're missing and what we need to do next, and if we need to hire a contractor or not.
Mm-hmm.
So I have not set a timeline on it yet. It's more of an information gathering and what do we do next and how do we get there? And we don't have a budget for this either in this fiscal year. So that's why I'd have to, this is a good year for us to gather information, assess and analyze. And we just had the directors meeting today where the finance director is putting out the schedule for developing the FY26 budget. So this is a very good time for me to be thinking about these things. So I know, make a request for the FY26 budget. So it's a good time to think this through. So we can, I will already in November, December, be putting forth my budget for FY26.
Yeah. And in terms of, a timeline for providing you this document, I want to clarify again, this is not for public distribution, but just taking in some of these comments, I don't think it's going to be that lengthy of a process. So no later than next week, I can send it your way.
Yeah.
It's up to Jeremy.
Yeah, we can. I haven't even done a thorough review of this document yet. So I need to do that. We've promised it to the Environmental Matters Steering Committee of City Council for the November meeting. In the third week of November, they want to have a presentation on it and their feedback. Then we need to convene staff and get their input and feedback on it before we start any other stakeholder process with it. Of course, we want Environmental Commission's feedback on it as well. You'd help us make it better before it gets too far down the road.
Right.
Okay.
Well, it's definitely an iterative process.
Yeah. So I think we can keep it in mind for November for our next meeting.
But Jeremy, to that point, so I'm saying,
yeah,
we do have some time, but I am in the next 2 months putting together my FY26 budget at the same time.
Yes.
So I am thinking about what projects I'm funding for FY26, which starts July 1, 2025.
Yep. Yeah, I hear you. And yeah, I think Well, I'll definitely keep it in mind, and we'll see how a couple things shake out, because I do want to reach out to Jesse at SRA and see if he's
Yes.
available for November, or if we need to keep look at January for him. And then Alderman Savage wants to come to us and talk about the Sweden trips and lessons. So sounds like November, new November date might work for him. So
Yeah. And keep in mind also, he may want to speak to us about legislation, including, I mentioned Forest Conservation Act amendments, and anything else, because sine die, the last day that all legislation must be wrapped up for this mayoral term is the end of October, the last city council meeting in October. Everything must be done for this mayoral term. So if there are projects, if there's legislation Alderman Savage wants to get done, he will be introducing it in a flurry at the end of this year and the beginning of next year.
right. Excellent.
Just in time for General Assembly. So we'll be super busy.
Super fun.
Yeah, that'll be great. And I did have a couple notes from Alderman Savage. We've already talked about gas-powered leaf blowers ban last month. I won't get into that. But he also mentioned the prohibition on new drive-throughs bill comes up for a final vote probably in November, he says. So I just wanted to mention that. I think we talked about that before. And he sounds like he's also looking into a task force about houseboats, and he wants us to think if we might want that referred to us, or to talk about that.
Okay.
And their impact of houseboats on the environment, like the sewer, the pumping out, and
Okay.
other things.
Yeah. That's okay. That's me, because the harbor master reports to me. So I have that. I wrote the staff report for that one, so I can get you the draft resolution that to start the task force and the staff report and everything for that, so I can get you that. I think they're going to introduce it on Monday.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
And that's everything I had from Alderman Savage, and we are coming up on 9 o'clock. Any other final notes for the group? We had a productive meeting. So, we approved minutes from June, July, and September with amendments for September. We decided to reschedule our November meeting. We're taking December off. I'll check with Bill and Paul to make sure we're lined up for November, and in case, so we are more likely to have quorum. We decided and agreed to 2 different letters of support. First one, we have a couple weeks to provide feedback back to Jenny. No strict timeline there. And the other one on the Green Space Equity Grant, I'll work and turn that around with Dylan very quickly. And yeah, those are the main points. So anything else for the good of the group? All right. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right.
Motion.
All right. Any objections? Nope. All right. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone. And
Thanks,
we'll
everyone.
see you
Thank
on
you.
November 19th.